Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Shared Discovery, the show and podcast dedicated to sharing all the exciting and enjoyable aspects of games and gaming. I'm your host Victor, and today I'm once again joined by my co-host Ron. Ron, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Victor. I'm having a great time here. How about yourself?
I'm having a great time. We're working through it. I am super excited for our topic today.
Yeah, me too.
We're talking about politics, not those politics. Table talk. How do you talk with the other players in the game to get advantage, right?
Right.
But I like this topic because it fits right into what the game we play the most, Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
Commander, so 4-player, free for all.
Yes.
And I've actually been playing a lot of Magic lately too. You've been playing a lot, so I thought this would be a great topic for us today because I think this topic is how you can level up as players.
Oh, for sure. You can score a lot of wins off of just like table talk and striking deals, and politics is the word we'll be using during this show, but that's just the agreed upon term that players use in Magic the Gathering to refer to the wheeling and the dealing and the bargains.
And I actually found an official definition on EDHREC, which is a Magic building, like deck building website.
Yeah, it's a database.
So let's just read that off.
You want me to?
Yeah, read that off first so we get that out of the way so they know what we're talking about today.
Okay, so politics is often used as a term to describe gameplay that features alliances and deals made between players in a multiplayer game of EDH, which is Elder Dragon Highlander. The word is derived from the way politicians will often interact with one another, attempting to gain favors and manipulating the way others see them. However, the term technically refers to all interactions between players in a multiplayer format. Politics includes players using one another as resources, managing the way they play to be more appealing, maintaining social contracts, and a whole world of other things.
Yeah, and I really love this definition. It puts it into perspective of what we're talking about today. And two things I wanted to point out here is this comes specifically from Magic the Gathering, Commander, EDH, but a lot of these techniques that we're talking about can be used for free-for-all competitive multiplayer games.
You got it.
And then the second thing, if you've seen our first episode, one of the things we talked about was that playing games are really good. There's a lot of social benefits today. So we're going to be talking about a lot of those social benefits, a lot of the communication in this episode today. So that being said, I had a question for you at the top of the hour.
Uh-oh.
When have politics been used successfully against you?
Against me?
Against you. When has someone outmaneuvered you?
Oh my Lord. So I got a weekly play group going for this highly political, highly economic game called John Company.
Okay.
And
tell me about John Company. Set the stage for me.
Lord. So it is a historical simulation game that takes upwards of 8 hours to play. So we break it up into weekly chunks. Yeah, we chunk it round by round or however long we get through in these periods. And it's taking way longer than 8 hours, but that's beside the point. The entire game is predicated on politics. It's all about politics. Every single thing in it is like, oh, I can do my job, but I'm going to get you to pay me to do my job. Okay. So at one point in the game, I had nearly been completely shut out of the game entirely. All the levers of power were not in my hands. Yeah. And this was done through a series of turns of like political maneuvering and manipulating other players to the point where my bank was drained, my power was gone, and all I had was the peddly resources I was able to scrabble together. And that was like a long con. That was a long political game.
How many of those 2-hour sessions did it take to get you to that point?
3 of them.
Over 6 hours, they slowly
picked away because I came from a commanding position, and everyone saw that and realized it, and they were able to rally.
They wheeled and dealed. They rallied together to take you down. Whew, that's a good example. Because we're going to talk a lot about today of how we successfully take down people with our politics, but I think it's important to say it's been used on us.
countless times.
An example for me in Magic the Gathering is Savannah, my partner. She does this thing every game. She'll just play a small piece, a small creature.
Yep.
Small creature, small ability, and they all add up together, right? But individually, they don't look very imposing.
Yeah, not a big threat.
Not a big threat. So I will play a big chunky one card that's boom, and then look at me, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, I need to take that out, and I'm like, it is threatening, but look at her. Like that, I'm being legitimate, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot. And she's like, no, don't look at
Downplays
me.
it.
Did you see that monster? You were right. And she gets away with it, takes the win. I told you. But that's good. That's very good strategy on her part that we're going to talk about later.
You got it.
So I thought that was important here. Humble us a little.
Right.
A lot of the reasons we know these techniques is because they've been used on us. So that being said, as we jump into the main topic here, I wanted to get an assumption that we're going to be moving forward with through the whole episode.
Yes.
And the assumption being that we're assuming that you are trying to win the game.
Always.
Always.
Personally, always.
Every action that you take, whether it's with the mechanics or with your words, are trying to get you to the win. So these techniques that we're going to be telling you are going to be helping to get you to that win. Right? So that's the main assumption here, is there is table talk where it's like, how you doing, what's going on, but we're going to find the technique in that table talk that helps you get advantage within the game, right? Because we could just talk and hang out, how's the weather, how you been? Or we could look at it as like, how does that distract the person? How does that get me to the win? Right?
Because talking about weather, you're not talking about.
Oh, I forgot.
game,
I forgot to do this thing. I'm like, oh darn. Oh shit.
Wow. Oh, if only I'd known.
Talk about. So that is the core assumption for the episode. Is these techniques, these strategies that we have for you, are going that. Try to win. We assume that you are all trying to win the game.
Yep. Or at least get you closer to that.
To get you closer.
Right.
So at the top, again, towards the beginning here, I wanted to put this here of what games can these strategies be used for? So we listed them, we talked. So for me, I think the two I'm going to reference a lot are Magic the Gathering, as we've been mentioning.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then Munchkin. Those are the two that I think I'm going to reference the most. And just a brief overview for those of you that don't really know what Commander or EDH is. It's traditionally played with 4 players is the optimal amount of players in a free-for-all setting where everyone has their own life totals, own decks, and are trying to defeat each other.
Right.
Be the last player standing.
Yeah, classic type of multiplayer 4-player game, right? And this is pretty much how any game that allows table talk that is multiplayer, and like there's certain rules that work in a 3-player setting versus a 4-player setting. So that's some things to be aware of as well.
So essentially, you know, if you are more than 2 people, more than a 1v1, that's the style of game we're talking about.
Right.
So keep that in mind. Magic, you all have your own stuff. You're trying to defeat each other, and one by one, you're going to try to knock someone out until you're the last player there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Munchkin, I'm sure people.
Munchkin we've explained it a little bit, but Munchkin, I think it ranges from 3 to 8 players.
Wow,
So these can be pretty big games.
Yeah.
But the goal is each person is trying to build up their board to be the first person to get to level 10.
Okay.
And one of the core mechanics is when you kick in the door, you fight monsters of varying levels, and if you can't beat the monster, you ask for help. All right, Ron, help me. What do you want? Because you defeat monsters, you get treasures, you get resources. So you're always talking about, okay, what's the deal here?
Right.
I'll help you, but for what?
And that is like a cooperative element to the game, but it's subverted in that you have to make a deal, and outside people can interfere with your temporary alliance.
Exactly, and that's what's different than Magic. Is Magic, there's no rules about making deals in the game. You can do it to get the advantages we're going to talk about, but it's not like part of the rule. It's not a mechanic like it is for Munchkin.
Right.
When you make a deal with someone in Munchkin, you're locked in.
Right.
And the rule book tells you how that works.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And same goes for poker, root, which is asymmetric, so none of the sides are exactly equal in power, so it relies on that wheeling and dealing and you being able to manipulate people with the board state and the board state with the people, because none of the factions are actually equal to each other.
Yeah.
And the manual lays that out pretty clearly. And then John Company, referring back to my weekly game that we have going on, it is explicitly mentioned in the rule book that you are allowed to break alliances.
Really?
And you are allowed to break deals that are long-term. Immediate things happen immediately, so you can't really go back on that, right? But it says in the manual, like, look, you should be doing people over.
yeah, okay. That's really interesting. And I like root too, like you mentioned. None of the factions are on even footing, so it's very much encouraged to say, I know I'm weaker than you, the cat army.
Right.
But me as the raccoon, the mercenary, what do you need?
Yep.
How
I'm gonna
can
work
I
with
help
you.
I'm
Yep.
going to work with you.
And then the inevitable betrayal.
Absolutely. And I didn't list any specific ones here, but social deduction games, hugely cooperative, because a lot of them you only have limited knowledge of which players are which role. Like, who's the werewolf? Nobody knows. You're trying to figure it out.
Exactly.
So you have to communicate. You have to make deals. I'll give you this information. I'll show you who I am. But what do I get out of it?
Constant bluffing. Oh, I'm not the werewolf. No, sir. It could never be the werewolf.
Never.
No.
Not at all. So,
Innocent me?
yes. So I wanted to list here at the beginning what kinds of games do these strategies work for, and the ones that we're going to talk about most today, that we're most familiar with.
Right. And this applies to most multiplayer games.
Multiplayer free-for-all.
Right.
Right, which actually leads us into our next topic of where don't these strategies work?
Oh.
That we're talking about, like what kinds of games don't work with? We're talking about, you're explaining to me how they really don't work for Euro games. So
Yep.
give a brief overview of what a Euro game is, why these don't work for those.
So Euro games are generally considered Euro games when they're from Germany or from a European country, and they offer a game that is low in interaction and high in complexity and mental interaction.
Okay.
So in a lot of them, you're not even directly competing against the other players sitting at the table. You're competing against your own abilities, say the score you scored last time, you're trying to outscore yourself from last time. Now, that's not necessarily true in a lot of Euro games. There's a sliding scale of interactivity there, but most of them are about economics and accrual and accumulation.
So those are games where you're all on the same board, but you might not ever even have to interact with each other. Okay. So these strategies that we're going to talk about, those might not work for that if the game doesn't reinforce it.
Exactly.
Doesn't support it. The next game that I had is co-op games.
Yeah.
Right? Co-op games, you need to talk to each other. You have to. But what good is making a deal and breaking a deal, betraying someone that's helping you? What good is that going to do?
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Because it's like, you put it really well in the pre-show.
Oh.
You said optimization versus manipulation.
Yeah.
How a lot, again, back to the definition of politics, you're manipulating your opponents to get ahead, but in co-op games, you want to optimize the communication so you all can get to the end.
Yep.
All get to the win there.
Oh, yeah.
And so clear, concise, inclusive communication, because sometimes communication, it pays off to say in these competitive games, be like, come here.
Yeah.
Don't talk to
Sidebar.
Don't talk
Sidebar.
to sidebar.
We're talking.
No,
You're
we're
not talking with us. Yeah.
That might pay off, but competitive game, like, well, fine, I won't help you. You might lose together because of that. Include each other.
Exactly.
Include all the players. Know that all of their points are valid.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And the last one we had here, which we touched on already, is 1v1 games. If you're competing against one other person, why would they make a deal with you?
Right. Psychological warfare still applies, but it limits your options.
It limits your options. You can't, there's no outside parties to say, come with me, come with me. Why wouldn't I try to destroy your thing or take you out when I have the opportunity.
Right, and in tournaments and competitive play, you can use like the referee or like trying to manipulate the rules or get one by on people, but that's generally like cheating more or less in like a straight up one-on-one, like see who's best at skill-based play.
There's some like tactics, but it's not like utilizing your opponent. I think about in Magic, there is the pen technique that professionals have used successfully, where professionals, whenever they lose life total, they don't use dice or anything to track their life, they write it down because it's not going to fall over, it's not going to mess up how much life. So there was a professional, I can't remember off the top, but what he did is he was like, okay, do what you're going to do. All right, send your attackers at me. And then he goes, picks up the pen to write down how much life he was going to lose. And then the guy's like, okay, send my attacks. And he puts his pen down. He's like, all right, I block and I remove your thing.
Genius. And like that's psychological. Like that's a type of like manipulation and bluffing, but it's not
utilizing another person's resource in the ways that we're going to talk about.
Exactly.
Right? He manipulated that guy into false security. Like, attack me, whatever.
Yeah.
Then he got him.
Got it.
So 1v1 games, these don't really work well. So that being said, the first facet that we want to talk about as we move into this political conversation is thinking about the experience levels of you and the players you're playing with.
Huge. Yeah. The, I lost where we're at.
Because
experience level,
it's huge. Your experience level is huge, and there's a caveat here that we can tell you to make these deals. We can tell you to bluff and do all these techniques, but if you don't know the game...
What use are they?
What use are they?
Yeah.
Right?
Someone's not willing to listen to you, or...
I can't focus on what you're saying. I need to focus on what I'm doing here. That's what we hear a lot when we're players.
Oh, yeah.
So these skills might come in higher when you get a competent level of understanding. Not a mastery, but a competent level where I know how what I'm playing works. I can think about the other players.
It's, I think you listened to a podcast with is it Mark Waters?
Yeah, with Mark Rosewater.
Rosewater.
He's the head designer of Magic. And it's funny, I couldn't find the podcast again, of course, but he talked about the 3 places where a player's eyes are to denote their experience level. So the first level is on their own stuff, on their own board, on their own hand. They're right here. They only have enough experience to focus on what they're doing. I need to get this right. I need to get what I'm doing right. Again,
makes sense.
Getting that, spending your energy, your mental energy to learn the game. Step 1, learn the game.
Learn the game.
Step 2, you get a little bit more competent, your eyes go up, and you're looking at the board. You're looking at what everyone else is doing in the game.
Yeah.
Right? So you're like, I'm comfortable with my mechanics. I want to know their mechanics.
Yep, and that's huge in Root is every single faction works completely differently. So then a huge part of that initial learning curve that's steep like a cliff is figuring out how do the cats work? How do the birds work? It's a game of woodland competition and dominance in warfare, right? And knowing how the mice work. And every single one of these creatures works completely differently, scoring points. And if you don't know how they score points, you're not going to know how to take them out, deal with them.
That's a really good example, because in Root, like, I'm focused on step 1, how do I score points?
Right, your board right here.
My board.
Just go through the list.
Step 2, I know how I do. How do they score points? How can I interact with that?
Yes.
And then step 3, you are completely comfortable with the pieces of the game, so I'm going to look at the player and see how they're behaving. Looking at their behaviors, their changes in like their tone,
where their eyes
their
are,
tells, where their eyes are. You're going to learn the players that you're with, right?
Yes.
So these, that's where you want to be here. Is you're comfortable looking at the player, and I can say, oh, I know Ron got quiet. Something's happening.
Oh yeah,
Oh
it's cooking up here.
Oh no, something's on its way, guys.
Yeah.
I can utilize that. So think about your experience level, and I would recommend for the eye level that try to be in that second to third level, right? Comfortable with the game, comfortable with the board, or you got it and you're watching all their mannerisms.
Right, and that's where these strategies, this politics, is really at play, is at those second and third eye levels.
And yeah, absolutely. And it's important to change your strategies to match the skill level of the person. Say you're at that third level and you're playing with someone at a first level who's only can focus on their stuff.
Yep.
You're going to have different strategies.
You have to adapt. You have to drop down a little bit, maybe not to their level, but the level above them, maybe.
Right? Maybe how you are using the words that you're giving. And the example that we talked about is our friend Kaylee.
Yes.
When they first started, they've improved a lot over the years. And when they first started, they were at level 1. I'm going to put my head down and play the game.
Right. Don't talk to me.
And you
Don't
would
wanna
hear
it.
oftentimes, they would play something,
Yep.
they'd go boom.
What you're saying
They're
doesn't
like,
make sense to me.
Maybe it's, hey, maybe that's not the best decision. I don't care what you're saying, I'm doing it. I would say that, right?
I love Kaylee, yeah.
It's fantastic. It's like, okay, that's fair. So, towards now, they know the game better, and I remember we played a few weeks ago. That's scary, and you're like, no. And for those Magic players,
I don't know what you're talking about.
Franco, mob boss, he makes exponential amount of goblins.
Exponential. That's
Yeah.
fast winning, in other words.
And I'm like, Kaylee, my thing is scary, but Ron is bluffing with me. He's trying to manipulate. And they listen. They have the experience level to say,
Yeah.
oh, you might be right. Okay.
Immediately
Okay.
perked up.
Yeah, you're okay. And it went that way, right?
Yes.
And it slowed you down. You still ended up winning the game, but you would have won much quicker.
Much quicker.
Much quicker. So that's a perfect example of matching the experience level. So at level 1, I would say things like, that's fair. Yeah, I understand what you're doing. But now that you've used that on me, you don't have to do it again, right? They'd be like, oh, yeah, you're right? So changing my wording, changing how I'm approaching the experience level of the player.
Right. And who you're talking to, gentle versus firm,
Yes.
things like that.
Absolutely. Knowing your players is huge, the players you're with, right? Because I think about playing with Savannah. If I'm like, do it, intense, she's like, I'm checked out. I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm going to get you.
Yep.
So, but if I'm like, with Chandler, playing with Chandler, you suck, do it. He's like, you're right, let me do it.
You're calling him out. Yeah.
Call him. He's like, all right.
I have pride.
Yeah. You're right. So knowing your players, knowing their experience level, and I put this next point here because I think this is crucial to consider, a crucial game theory across games is threat assessment.
Yes. Key.
This is what we're trying to manipulate people in. We're trying to move their attention on. It's the player's ability to determine where their attention should be focused. So these techniques that we're talking about, we're trying to get you to switch your focus somewhere else.
Yeah.
Don't look at me.
It's like using Lord of the Rings metaphor here. It's like moving the Eye of Sauron away from Frodo so
Yeah.
you can get to Mount Doom.
Absolutely. And some Magic players will even call it Jedi mind tricks.
Oh.
When you convince them to do something that's not great for them.
Yeah. These aren't the droids you're looking for.
Not
Classic.
Yeah. I'm not the player you're looking for.
I'm not the player.
So, while sometimes the threat is incredibly obvious, that is scary, Cranko is scary, to the entire table, it's often very subjective and it changes constantly. Constantly. It changes of what actually is threatening,
Yep.
it changes of what is perceived to be threatening.
That's something Root advertised itself as, is like an environment. You're in the woods now. You have to play by the woods rules, the forest rules, and that is a constantly changing ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And a lot of these games are an ecosystem with elements that are always in flux, always adapting and changing.
And early in Magic, you'll hear newer players say like, well, you just said they were bad. What? It changes. And the threat changes, right? So your ability to determine where your focus should change, it's all about information control, because you as a player need to adapt to where the threat is. So as you have more experience with the game, you'll be able to know where the threat is and how much information and attention you want to bring to it. So if I have a big threat, and I know I'm the threat, I'm like, oh man, your life total is so high, Ron. How are we gonna get through that?
You're not.
And then and they're like, oh yeah, Ron's threatening, not
Oh,
you.
don't look at me. I'm not here.
So who and what is the threat? Keep that in mind as you're playing, as you get experience with more games. All of these multiplayer games are going to have someone who's more threatening.
Always.
Something that's more threatening.
Yes. And if they're smart, they'll be misdirecting you.
They'll be trying, it's all misdirection here. We're all trying to misdirect each other.
Yeah,
So
wait, are you trying to misdirect me right now?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I was doing the same.
top of the hour, I'm trying to win this podcast.
It's all about winning.
It's all about winning. So keep that in mind, that the threat is always changing, and know you should have confidence and competent level of skill to feel like you know where the threat is.
Right.
So you want to get into some of these tactics?
Tactics.
What's this first one we have? I think we've touched on it
I
quite
think,
a bit.
is it misdirection?
Yes.
Yeah. Wasn't sure for a second.
They're chugging along. They're playing their things. They're about to win. They're at level 9 in Munchkin.
Yeah.
You know, they're about to kill everyone. And you're like, actually, the trolley's going to go that way. Because you should look at them.
Yes.
They're chugging along. They're about to run you over. And you're like, well, actually, Ron's at a higher life total than me. Just because I have this dragon, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Or a tactic that I like to do, too,
Yes.
is to mislead someone to think that something else that I have is threatening. So in Magic, I'll have something that is in my hand, but I'll be like, what's in your graveyards?
Go check
What's
my
over
graveyard.
there?
Yeah.
Right. Or I'll know that sometimes I need to go into the tank, which going into the tank is going into the think tank, where someone gets quiet and they're counting.
Really
happen.
processing.
They're really processing. How do I get that? And especially notice this, point it out if it's very different than how they've been all game, where they're talking, they're having a good time. Look at that, and they go, quiet. Point that out. Look for that, right? So when I know I need to go into the tank and I'm about to change my behavior, I'm like, what's over there? Count really quick. Misdirect. So right here, we wanted to talk on bluffing versus lying.
Right. They're distinct things. They're considered synonyms, but not really, because bluffing is, help me out with this one, Victor. Bluffing is...
So we'll start with lying.
Lying is easier?
Lying, I think, is
easier?
Right.
Okay.
There's a lot of different definitions, but it's about the connotation and the intent of how you're approaching this method. So lying is you're always saying a false statement.
Yes.
I will not attack you this turn.
Yeah, and bluffing's a little more vague as to whether it's true or not.
You're leaving it up in the air of, I could, right? You're planting doubt in their minds, but you're not just straight up lying, right?
It's a possibility.
It's possibility. I might not attack you.
I could be doing this, but I might not be doing this.
And lying isn't, so in Johnson, you said lying is a rule.
John Company. Yes, lying is absolutely a rule.
You have to lie to win.
Oh yeah, I've lied to many times in the game. Yep.
Yeah, but in Magic, there's no rules about it. You can lie. You can make deals, break them, and win the game, but we encourage bluffing. We encourage the subtle misdirection, the subtle misleading statements, the doubt, the I could, because if you lie and you win, there might be credibility issues.
Oh, for sure.
Future games. Right? Well, I said I wouldn't attack you, but I'm going to anyway. Maybe someone might not trust you next turn. The whole table might not trust you, might not help you, and you have to rebuild that trust. So we encourage bluffing over lying because your credibility is huge.
Right. And a lot of that has to do with the scope and scale of the game. In Magic, there's always the next game to look forward to.
Yeah.
So if you lie in this one, it will have knock-on effects. It will
Yeah.
play out in the next few games.
And this is jumping ahead a little, but I think this is a perfect transition to what you brought up of meta grudges.
Yes, one of my favorite political schemes or scams or what have you is the meta grudge. This is where, okay, we finished this game, but we still have, say, 2 more games left to go. And I know who knocked me out of the first game. Well, then I'm going to target that person this next game because I know how strong they are. I know that they're good at bluffing maybe, or they lied to me. Any number of reasons. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you carried over the emotions and the actions from that game into the next game.
And what I like about that too, specifically how you use it, is you might not even be upset.
No.
You usually aren't. I'm like, what the heck, Ron? And you'll be like, see how that worked? And you'll use that because oftentimes people will jump on, latch onto what you're doing and be like, I'm going with you.
Yeah.
Let's get them. You're right. They were a jerk last game.
Right.
So that could be creating these artificial grudges.
Exactly.
It can be huge for springboarding you ahead further than your cards can.
Yeah, and that allows you to maybe even bluff without having to anyone realize that you're bluffing.
A common phrase that you'll hear for meta grudges is, yeah, but you did that to me last game, so I'm going to target you.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Oh, no. No, we're in a grudge. I don't want to be in a grudge. It was a game. Can we wipe the slate clean? And no, I'm mad at you.
Yep.
So it's your job, if you are on the receiving end of the meta grudge, how do I get on your side?
How do I get on? And that can involve like promises.
Which leads to our next tactic of alliances and deal making.
deals.
A huge part of all of these games. They're going to vary and to what degree you can use them, but they're huge. How many games have we won off the back of deals?
I can't name a one that we didn't win off of like a deal being made somewhere
In the game.
that just completely throws a wrench in what you expect.
You know what? I won't attack you for the rest of the game if you leave me alone.
Ooh, I've lost so many games.
That's a
saying that.
strong deal. I don't encourage those deals. Those are the deals where you're gonna want to like back out, or
Right.
you're gonna paint yourself into a corner and be like, but why'd I make that deal?
Right, and just as we're saying these is like hard and fast rules, like these may not always apply at all times. They change just as the board state changes,
Absolutely.
right? What deals and what alliances and what
Yes.
misdirections you can even make. That is, I forgot my point.
They are constantly changing, and the board state is constantly changing. So we recommend, as you make deals,
Oh, yeah.
make
Temporary.
temporary
That's
and
what it was.
finite.
Yep.
If you make really long deals, it's like, you know, you made that deal with me 8
Right.
turns ago.
Exactly.
No, I've had games like that where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do it, and Ron's like, hey buddy,
Yep.
hey guy,
Yeah.
hey pal,
Friendo.
you remember that deal you made to not kill me? Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Forgot about it.
I forgot. But I want to keep my credibility in check.
Yes.
So I'm like, you're right. I will honor that deal. I might not win this game, but my credibility for future games is much more important to me.
Right.
So make sure the deals are clear. Know the parameters of the deal. So oftentimes, we've had to change our wording because we'll say in Magic, I won't attack you if you don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, you said you wouldn't attack me. So now we say, I won't attack you for 1 turn.
Mm-hmm.
Very clear,
Concise.
very concise, and finite, right?
Very finite.
We know what the deal is. We know how long it's lasting.
Yep.
And there's no misinterpreting that.
And you never know what the game is going to look like a turn later.
A turn later, like we were saying, or 8 turns from now.
Yes.
Why did I make that deal? So
Exactly.
trust is everything. Save your credibility and make those concise deals so you don't have to break them later.
And know when to trash your own credibility. That can be a tactic,
Are you only going to ever play games with these people one time?
right? Or maybe you want them to be meta-grudging you, so then you know who your enemies are, and you can turn those other players against them. Like, oh, this person's being petty. I can get allies by saying, "Oh, you're meta-grudging. That's very petty of you."
You're in a wow,
That's misdirection right there.
exactly back to the misdirection.
Yeah.
I love that. And so as we've touched on this throughout, but we have the mechanical deal that's worded into the game versus the social deal, and these might look different. So I would say it's very crucial if you have a game that has it embedded in the game, know what the rules are for making that deal, so you know how much you can bend it.
Exactly.
So I think Munchkin's a great counterpoint to Magic, because it's in the rules that when you make a deal, you have to establish very clearly what you're getting. Well, I want 3 treasures of those 4, but you can pick first, right? It's clear, specific wording, and then you have to lock it in somehow. All right, we are in a deal, we're fighting together.
Yep.
There's no backing out, because then other players can interfere with you.
Right. Because a deal is like, as soon as you pick up that money, as soon as you do a thing, it's usually
Locked in. And what we'll do is we'll just like, all right, we locked in.
Boom.
We're stuck. For the rest of this encounter, we're in it together.
it seals the deal, and it has to be an action. It can't just be verbal. Because as powerful as words are, you have to have that physical, signifier that this is what's happening.
Yes, and for Munchkin specifically, deals can only be with 2 people, right? It can only, like the mechanical deals, you can only work with one other person. But in Magic, 3 of us want to take down that person.
Right.
You can maneuver it differently. So I think this is, know the rules. Back to that know the rules. So if it is a mechanic, you're doing the deals properly.
Exactly. Always know the limitations of your deals.
Yes, and making friends is good too. We've talked about getting people against others.
Right.
But you can come in and be the friend.
Yes.
Right? Swoop in. I got you.
I'll be your
help you
ally.
out.
Yeah.
Creating good, like you said this in the pre-show, create goodwill with others. Right? And yeah, I'll help you out. You know, this one time I'll just give you this thing. You don't owe me anything.
Oh, and if you know somebody has a big ego, just feeding that ego.
Oh, wow.
Little bits.
Nice play. That was huge.
Oh,
that was so
really?
cool.
You think so? Whoa.
And sometimes,
wow.
sometimes I don't even use this politically. It just is. But I'll be like, dude, Ron, that game was sick. That was awesome. Oh my gosh. So I pulled out my social psychology book, right?
Oh.
And past me was like, I'm gonna help you out. And there was one bookmark in there on a page that's actually perfect for this. And it was about positive moods versus negative moods and the research on that. And research shows, right, if you ask someone for a favor when they're in a positive mood, they're more likely to help you out.
Right. That makes
That's
sense.
obvious.
Yeah, that's obvious.
But the research was really cool. I liked this. The study that I'm referencing, I should have wrote down the author and everything, but I can do that later. But essentially what they did is they had someone making a phone call and to a participant saying, this is the last money I have for this phone call. Can you relay a message for me to someone else? So the control group for this study, they weren't given anything. They just got the phone call.
Yep.
And then the test group for this was given stationery paper, a gift right before the phone call, putting them in a good mood. And what you saw is that the control group, the people that weren't given a gift, they only helped the person about 10% of the time. But for the people that were put into a good mood by giving the stationery paper, within a few minutes, helped that person nearly close to 100% of the time.
Holy crap. So it doesn't even really matter what the gift is, just that you're helping. Right?
Helping, putting someone in a good mood, right? And it's really important here too, the study tracked the time between the requests. So that was about 2 minutes after the gift and the request, that was near 100. By 20 minutes, it dropped back down to about 10% helping rate.
Okay.
So how do we use this? If you do a nice gift, you give someone a charity in the game, take advantage of it soon, quickly. Because that good mood is in their brain. They're primed to help you.
Exactly. And priming is huge for any sort of decision that you want somebody else to make or any misdirection that you're going to do. Is like building up trust so that they have as much reason to doubt what you're saying as they do to believe what you're saying.
Yes.
So,
Mind melting.
mind melt. You got to set them up for anything that you're going to knock them down with.
Yes, and an example I have here is a card in Magic called Humble Defector.
I love this guy.
It's a card that you can tap to draw 2 cards, but when you do it, you have to give it to another player. So often we'll say, I'll give it to you, but you have to give it back to me. And sometimes what I've found, if they don't like you right now, they'll say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to give it to someone else. So then I'll go, well, you know what? I feel like you need cards. And I'm like, yeah, let's be buddies. That's what you'll hear a lot. Let's be buddies.
They literally give up their position. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it's so leveraging, putting them in a good mood.
Yep.
And often I'm like, well, I drew you 2 cards. You don't want to attack me, right? If you get rid of my cards, it's like, you're right, you did give me 2 cards.
Who doesn't like drawing cards?
So I put this card here because it's a perfect example of it's deal making the card. It's packed into it.
So good.
What about negative moods, though? What did the book say about negative moods? It's really interesting. It's like you would assume that it'd be the opposite.
Right.
That if someone's in a negative mood, they're not going to help you.
Yeah, they're going to be like taciturn, like begrudge that you're even talking to them.
Yeah, why
right?
are you talking to me? But what you find is that guilt is actually a powerful tool to get someone to help you.
Of course it is.
So people that are guiltier about something are more likely to comply. And the research, the example that we saw was on Catholic individuals, right? So it was March of Dimes, the charity.
Right.
And what they did is they approached Catholics going into confession and coming out of confession.
Right.
So the premise being that if you're going into confession, you're thinking about everything you've done wrong, you're feeling guilty. You're leaving confession, it's out, I don't care, I'm good.
I'm uplifted, I've been saved.
Jesus, take the wheel, I'm out, right? And so what they found is the people that they approached going into confession were almost like 2 times as likely to donate
That's incredible.
than the people that were coming out.
Because they feel guilty.
They feel guilty, and this is actually called the negative state relief hypothesis.
Wow.
Right? So what it means is you engage in certain behaviors to get rid of negative feelings and feel better about yourself. So how do we leverage that in a game? Back to our definition of politics, how do we manipulate the resources that are the other people?
Oh, if I would go, oh, who's losing right now? They got to feel bad about themselves, and then see if I can't make them feel happy about themselves by manipulating and using them.
A common one.
Oh, Lord.
Common one
I
that
feel
comes
so
to mind-
dirty.
Yeah, a common one that comes to mind. I have one for Magic and one for Munchkin.
Okay, hit me with them.
Yeah, so for Magic, it's like if you take someone out in the game, one person out early, and then the game still goes on for another hour. Next game, you'll often hear things like, well, I'm not going to hit you because I took you out so early last game. I kind of feel bad about it. I'm sorry.
Such a good one.
Or I used that removal on you, like back to our threat assessment. They use their removal on something, removal being something in any game that takes out someone else's pieces.
It's a form of interaction.
Yep. And they use the removal on something that you were saying, hey, don't do that, that's not actually the threat. And it ends up coming to bite them in the butt.
Yes.
Back to our example about then Kaylee. Kaylee, that's not the threat right now. My thing's not the threat, that's the threat. I don't care, I'm taking it out.
Yes.
And there have been times where that thing comes to bite them in the butt. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Why did I do that?
I should have listened to you.
Yep.
You should have, but
Never
now-
trust Ron.
now you know.
Yeah.
Now you know to just leave me alone for a little bit.
Right.
Guilty tone even. Just
Now you know.
You
Oh,
know.
yeah, very.
the victim tone. Oh man, you did
That's
that.
it, yeah.
You did that. So, again, so
Can't believe you victimized me.
look for the guilt, right? Look for the guilt. and take advantage of it. Because again, we're trying to get to the win. Any means necessary.
Any means necessary.
Right?
If you feel dirty, you're doing it right.
And then for Munchkin, what I've found is a player is never truly out of Munchkin. All players are playing until someone wins, which is different than Magic.
Yeah.
There's just sometimes a player will die.
Okay.
And what that means is that they are out for the round and then they respawn without their gear. And they're just trying to build back up.
Right.
So what I found is if someone kills a player and then someone else snowballs, gets a huge advantage off of them, the person who killed them, knocked them out for the turn, will be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll help you level up. I'm sorry for taking you out, right? Look for those examples. And I've been able to leverage that. I've been killed. It's like, dude, you knocked me out.
Oh, yeah.
Will you help me?
That's how I got back into the game.
Please.
And John Company,
Yes.
for example, was I'd been completely removed from the levers of power, but through guilting people like, look, I'm not even in the game anymore. How much of a threat am I to you?
Right.
And they put me in a position where I was like, oh, I can be a huge nuisance
Be a
here.
huge threat now.
Yeah, now I'm a threat. Like,
Now
you
I'm
messed up, buddy.
You messed up, buddy. That's super cool. And again, even if your resources are out of the game, what you should know from this episode is you always have this resource. You have your words. You have your brain, you have your words. Use them. Because again, you're at the bottom and you clawing up.
Yep.
So again, keep this in mind, the negative state relief hypothesis. People don't want to feel bad, so how do you help them not feel bad?
By taking advantage of that.
Removing their guilt.
Right.
So, alliances, deals, positive mood, negative mood. The next point that we have here is called minimizing your threat profile.
Oof, words.
Words.
Long. Lots of words.
Mind melting.
Mind melting. Essentially what that boils down to is just don't look as strong as you are.
Don't look
Play weak.
Help people know that someone else is stronger than you.
Exactly.
Remind them. You know, I might have this scary creature, but they have 3.
Right.
Remind them. And what we've found in these multiplayer games is that being second best for majority of the game is actually really good.
Right. It puts you in that prime position to move up to first place, and it puts you in a position to politically manipulate everyone against that first number 1 position.
Against number 1 position to use all of their removal, all of their attacks, all of their resources against them, so then they're taken out, they're knocked down a peg, and you're like, cool, I can do what I want, unhindered.
Oh, yeah?
So it's kind of like, I think we put it here, arch enemy, right? Avoid being the arch enemy.
Right, unless you can use that somehow.
Unless you can handle it, but typically if you springboard so far ahead that 3 people need to work against you,
You're done.
that's scary.
You're toasted.
That's done.
Yeah.
So you want to be, not the arch, you want to be like the bridge, the mini enemy.
Right. The
Right, the mini boss. You
runner-up.
want to be
Yeah.
the mini boss below the.
Exactly. The lieutenant who gets promoted
Yes,
into
yes.
the arch
Yes,
enemy.
when the Demon King dies.
Who's next in line?
It's me.
Yeah,
Let's take it. I
there.
own this world.
And by that time, hopefully all the resources of your other opponents have been used up, and you can just easily knock them down and win.
And a concept that is often tied directly to like managing your threat profile, being in second place in games, is called sandbagging.
I love sandbagging.
Sandbagging is, like you said, underselling what you can do in the game. Holding your removal even though you know you could use it. Letting someone else become more threatening.
Yep.
Something I've actually started doing in Magic, there's a card called Soul Ring.
Yes.
Costs 1 mana, gets you 2, it's super strong. Anyone who's played Magic or Commander knows that.
Right.
And the research shows that the person who plays that turn 1 actually ends up losing more. So what I've started doing is I might lose a couple turns of mana, but I'll play it a couple turns later when the boards develop, so people aren't just staring that down. Oh, look at him, he has the Soul Ring, get him, get him.
Yeah.
So holding back, it sounds like a contradiction. I was like, oh, I want to get there faster.
Right.
But be second,
Yeah.
hold on to that good stuff, play the good cards at a later time.
Right.
Really beneficial.
And it can even feel like misplays might be your best move in the moment. Like just playing the wrong way or playing the wrong move to make yourself look like you're not able to do anything.
Sometimes I'll just make a bad attack.
Yeah.
I'll attack in with a creature and be like, oh,
What did I do?
I forgot you had that. Oh, I'm so dumb. Oh well. It's okay. It's okay. And then you're like, you look threatening, you're making mistakes, you're off your game. But are you?
Right.
Are you off your game? So use sandbagging. And sandbagging is actually a bluffing technique, right? It can be seen as a bluffing technique.
Yeah, tying it in,
Yeah, and something I like to do in Magic that's gotten me some wins is the board's crazy and people are like, we need a board wipe. Something that clears everything off, destroys everything. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Sorry. I'll hold on to it for five turns.
Yeah.
That really helps me the most.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because sure, they need the board wipe, but do I need it? Do I really?
I think I'm fine.
I don't have that card.
I've misdirected enough people, made enough deals with my words. I don't need to use my actual cards.
No.
What's the last tactic we have as we wrap up?
Tactic is probably one of the harder ones to use, especially if you're like not in a strong position or the amount of information going around is like really clear and everyone is on the same level. But this one can be really powerful. It's intimidation.
Yes.
It's looking big and scary to keep people away from you. It's threats. Like, you want to attack me? Do it. See what happens.
We say that all the time too.
Bring it on.
I'll hold up a card. Be like, do it.
Yeah,
That's
this one right here.
That's my bluff technique. It's like,
This is the ace.
this might be the ace. Might be the Swords of Plowshares.
It's the hole in one.
Or Munchkin might be the one shot.
Yep.
Right?
The holy hand grenade.
See what happens. Leverage those threats. So that's another type of bluffing. Threats.
Mm-hmm.
And intimidation, like you said, can be really difficult because you often have to be in that arch enemy position, but you don't want to be there.
No.
So the times that I've remembered that intimidation has been really successful is when you are in that arch enemy position, you have a state where the person next to you has to do what you say, or else they're out of the game. So they're like, whatever, I'll do what you say, right?
Yes.
You have 4 life left. You have a card that can do 4 life to them. Okay. Because staying in the game, you still have a small percentage chance of winning, right? Even if you're in the game, if you're out of the game, it's 0.
Right.
So you're there, even if it's making a deal with the arch enemy, you still have a chance. And again, we're trying to win.
And intimidation is kind of like a shelter in audacity sometimes too. If you're just holding on to like a do nothing card, like a dead card, and you're making that threat to somebody, they may believe you against their own best interests, right? Like, you're straight up lying to their face. And it would be in their best interest to team up with everybody to take you down. But because you're making that threat, it's enough to push them away from making the right choice.
Oh, absolutely. And I love the whole point of this is if you can use your words instead of your resources in the game, you're getting ahead.
Yeah.
You're saving those for later. And in CEDH, so competitive commander, the highest level there, I'll listen to that's where I get a lot of these strategies. I'll listen to them because they're at that level 3. They're they know the game inside and out. They're looking at the other players.
Yes.
So they're trying to leverage each other with their words, right? And what I've heard one person who won a tournament, he's like, okay, I know you're gonna do that, but here's this card.
It literally shows them
the cards. And remember, when you show a card to someone, and Commander, you have to show everyone.
Okay.
So you have to be careful, again, about information control. But he used it as intimidation. He's like, do it. The guy stops. You're right, I probably shouldn't do that. He stops what he's playing, doesn't play his card, and then that player got to save their card for later.
Yeah, and that's a whole like mental load of having to reassess things now that you have this new information that you shouldn't have, and they're like staring you down, and it's like they've got a gun in your face. Like, what do you do?
Yes. So you have to be careful to not become too imposing.
Yep.
But if you are not imposing, if you are the arch enemy, see where you can use these threats.
Right, because there's like levels of escalation, and you never want to get too high. You never want to be the one escalating things. You just want to match people's escalation. And intimidation is just taking that and just going to 11 right off the bat.
Yes.
Like, just, nope, this is the situation. You made a mistake. I'm calling you out.
Yeah, and I think what's funny is I've been in the arch enemy position before. I'm like, I don't want to be here.
Get me out.
So I will start threatening people to take me down. Just come on, try it.
Yeah.
Then I'll get knocked down to number 2.
And that's it.
Where I want to be.
Yeah, they did exactly what you wanted them to do.
Exactly. So that's all the tactics we have. Just a rundown of those. We have misdirection. Look at them. Don't look at me.
No.
Deals and alliances.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you the humble defector.
Please.
Give it back.
I love cards.
Me too.
Yeah.
Use it against them.
You got it.
Deal with each other later.
Minimizing your threat profile. Looking small when you're
Looking small.
actually huge.
Yes.
Walk softly, carry a big stick, you know?
Making threats when you can.
Right.
Being careful about that.
Yep.
And again, I wanted to bring this up here because I think this is super cool. The negative state relief hypothesis, right? Making someone guilty
Yes.
and helping them not feel guilty, feel better about
Or
themselves.
even better, if someone else makes them feel guilty, taking advantage.
You can
of
be the
that.
person to help them not feel guilty.
There
And
you
then
go.
back to our other research about putting them in a positive mood, likely to help you.
And you can build an alliance off of a positive mood.
Absolutely. And then lastly, intimidation. Making threats, being careful as you do it.
And that one is, you got to know when to make threats.
You have to know when, how, and be careful. You make too many threats. I've done this before too. Trying to go to second, I've gone to last.
Ooh, yes.
So, Ron, as we close here, what is your favorite tactic that we talked about here?
Oh my goodness, I am a big fan of just general misdirection. I love misdirection. She is a fantastic paramour. It's all about,
It's a pretty good card too.
yeah, and it ties into the minimizing your threat profile of like, oh, where am I even? Act like water, be like sand, never be where they're looking, always be everywhere, but really you're concentrating for that next powerful strike.
Absolutely.
Be unknowable to your opponents.
I love that. And that ties into my favorite tactic. If you've been listening, I love sandbagging.
Sandbagger, that's this guy.
Like, why do you still have 7 cards in hand? They're all land. I have nope, that's lying. I have a lot of lands, right? That's bluff.
There you go.
I'm not trying to lie and say I have 7 lands when I don't, but
Don't be specific.
it's mostly lands. It's mostly useless stuff. I can't, or what you'll often hear is like, nothing helps me right now.
This is all useless. This is trash.
This is trash. Look what they're doing.
Yeah, don't look at me.
Can you see Ron's board? It all has hexproof. I can't even target it.
I can't do anything
I
to
can't
it.
do anything. So I love sandbagging. I've won a lot of games off of holding a counter, not a counter spell because I don't play blue,
Right. That's
but holding a
bad.
board wipe for a long time.
Yep.
All right, that wraps it up.
Yeah.
That was a fun episode.
That was a lot.
That flew by.
Yeah.
So as we close here, want to say thank you to BCTV for letting us put on this production again.
Yeah, you're awesome.
We have all those magic decks back there that we're going to take advantage of right now.
Yes, please.
Right, in 10 minutes.
Right.
Bathroom break. I'm excited for that. So if you have any questions, have any techniques for politics and maneuvering that you want to tell us?
Yeah, you
let
think
us
we missed any?
Yeah, let us know in the comments on YouTube. Shoot us an email at shareddiscoveryshow@gmail.com, where we'd love to read those emails. And let us know if you have any questions. We would love to read those off on air. I think this would be the sweet spot to do that. Answer some questions.
Oh, yeah.
So, as we sign off of episode 6 of Shared Discovery, please make sure to have some fun, be kind to others, of course, play some games.
Yes, please.
So, sign us off, Ron.
Okay, riches must be divided, but real wealth can be shared.
Thanks for joining us.
You're great.
Make some deals.
Bye.
Don't break them.
Yeah, don't break.
Don't break.
Don't break.
Don't break them. The credibility.